Hello YouTube. Today I am bringing you a live play video. I'm playing 5 cent, 10 cent, and I'm at what appears to be a very nice table. Here, obviously a phenomenal flop for my hand. And so I've got my opponent's color coded here, and yellow means fish and green means whale. My ideal type of opponents or table to be playing at is one where there are no loose aggressive or tight aggressive regulars. And this appears to be the case presently. Obviously, I'm not going to call in this 5-way pot with this very weak flush draw. Not only do I have 3 diamonds, but in a 5-way pot, it's more and more likely that somebody has a higher flush draw, leaving me drawing dead or virtually dead. How did I find a table like this? Well, I spent a lot of time in the lobby, and essentially what I do is I simply table select away from known regulars. So if I can find a table with no identified tight aggressive or loose aggressive regulars, even if it's just 4 or 5 unknown players, then that's what I go for, because then I'll be able to identify the unknowns, which will help me in future game selection activities, and there's always the chance that there are no regulars there at all, which is the most profitable table is one where every opponent you have is making serious mistakes that will benefit you. Limping in with loose hands, making very questionable flop calls, that sort of thing. So this table, it began with 2 unknowns. So I looked and I searched them. It was these 2 guys, Pedin and Lackey Father. And I saw that they were, at the time, they were just playing the one table. So I labeled them as fish, and I sat, and then these guys joined. So it's to your benefit to have seats open at a table because, well, usually it's a regular who joins. Sometimes fish join too, and so long as so long as there are no regulars there, then the chance increases that then it's possible that this becomes the dream table, like what I'm playing at right now. I expect this waiting list to grow and grow. There's only 1 person on it right now, but the waiting list should grow as we continue. Oh, it's weird. It's only showing 2 hands for these guys. My Hold'em manager must be frozen today. Or maybe it's so this is it's not a bad hand. My question is if this guy limps, do I want to isolate or do I want to just limp in? And I'm just going to limp in here over limp. and 6-way with the nuts straight on a monochrome flop. My intent here is simply to check and fold. I'm not sure how often one of these guys will have a flush, but I think it's a decent amount of the time. This hand is certainly strong enough to isolation raise pre-flop after a 100 VPIP player limps in. But it's not like a super strong hand. I think the 7 is dangling down here. And I also, against opponents who are fairly likely to make some serious post-flop errors, I don't mind keeping to deep SPR situations, especially with more speculative hands. I think this is a bit of a speculative hand. I won't be raising out of the big blind here. It's not a great hand either, although a pretty gin turn. I'll just raise. Chance to free roll another ace queen. My opponent might pay me off with queen 9. I do take sort of a small risk of getting free rolled by a better ace queen. It's not that hard to have a better ace queen there, but 3 pair, I can bet 4-way, especially with so many bad turns. And I'm not going to draw here either. 3-1. I have 6 fairly nuttish outs. 45. 6 to 39. 6.5 to 1. I'm not even certain I could count these all as nut outs. It's certainly possible. It's pretty unlikely, but it's possible somebody's got a set, right? Which could leave me drawing pretty slim. But even if they are not, even if they're all good, it's only 6 cards, right? So kind of low percentage. I'm gonna overlimp here. This is a very weak hand, but surely I'm getting some value from these 2 loose limpers. Do have position. I think I'll check back if they check to me. And I'm not going to draw here either. All my secondary outs, kings, 9s, and 7s are kind of tainted. I don't know that clubs are good, so I'm just going to fold. But I like to take a little time to think about the decisions. I find that if I act too quickly, I'm more prone to making mistakes than if I take some time and try to consider the argument to call, the argument to fold. Think these things through. I'm just going to fold this hand here. Pretty weak hand again. This hand is probably a regular. I've got flash. It's not searchable. But we'll see next hand if he posts. Table selection is very important for winning poker. It's by playing in higher edge games against worse players, you not only win more, but you also reduce your variance, or you reduce your negative variance, because when you have a higher win rate, you're not stuck as often. You spend more time winning, less time being stuck. head in 3 bets here. He didn't. I guess I'll bet here. Do a 3 of a kind. Probably when my opponent just calls. My hand is good. He could be slow playing me. I'll play it like it's good. And no reason not to value bet the river. Huh. Kind of tempted to raise this hand, but since I lost the last one, I'm gonna fold. It's a little marginal, and you certainly don't want to make the mistake of playing too loose when you're reeling from a loss. I kind of like my opponent's play there. The board is fairly dry. On the flop especially, right? Only really a 10 or a queen change the board texture. And getting 3.5 to 1, I'm going to call here and check any flop. And I'll just give up on this flop. Will not be attempting any epic blocker bluffs. If he checks back, I'd bet straights for sure. Non-heart jacks. So if it's limped here, it's not limped here. Still pretty tempted to get in here. Kind of not doing that well against a tight raising range, but should be getting lots of value from this guy. And also Lorelei probably liable to make some post-flop errors. But I'm not going to draw to my flush on this flop. Another weak hand here. Of course, I fold. St. Wells is looking a little more reggish than at least the other guys. Probably if Johnny or Lorelei leaves and maybe some regulars join us, then I'll quit the table. It's important to select out of games as they worsen. And Johnny left. Still an all-right game, four-handed with these two guys. But if two regs were to join right now, then I would quit. I give some value to the fact that there are seats open, that the game can improve, and I take value away if the seats are occupied by players I don't want at the table. Of course, I would be folding my 10 here. Interesting that Flash tried to check raise there. I guess it's an alright spot to do so. He's first to act, so that's the best spot to check raise from. And of course, you could bet there too. Nothing wrong with betting. I guess it's worth noting that he's a little tricky. This is sort of a marginal hand. Maybe I would open it if I wasn't stuck. But when I'm stuck, I like to play just a little tighter. And here the reg left, which is nice. I'm not at all convinced that St. Wells is in fact a fish. He's got enough aggression that he's not really necessarily somebody I want to play against. Why not give him the category of reg? Here, if he open limps the button, I'll complete. I could stab here maybe, or not outs. Possibility to make diamonds. I think it's the passive player. I'm not sure there's much value in calling. 2-1, 4 nut outs, and then I can make it a weak flush. Aces on the button, fairly obvious raise. I'm going to check back this very wet flop, but I think there's a strong case for betting as well. I'll probably bet close to pot here if he checks, but of course I will not be giving a passive player action on that board with that hand. I might just flat if he laid out there. Of course I'll bet. And we get a good table draw, which is nice. Typically, I will mark any one tabler searchable player as a fish. Usually they are. Sometimes they're not, but it's no big deal. After you play with them for a while, should have got in there. After you play with them for a while, you can usually tell. This seems like an alright spot to just call. Fairly weak hand, but some nut potential. And I do want to go out of my way to play pots with both of these players. Of course, ace, king, queen, 10, a phenomenal hand to open from the cutoff. Not sure, probably call if Poco were to 3-bet. Seems like a fairly obvious spot to bet on the flop here with the nut top wrap. Even against a set, I am 40%, and that is a worst case scenario. I do much better against everything else. Crush all draws. And I think I'll check back the turn here. Okay, now he pots it into me. Problem is I have no clubs in my hand, which means I have 9 nut outs, 2 aces, 2 kings, 2 queens, and 3 nines. 9 nut outs, 8, 42, 9 to 33, 4-1, getting 2-1. I can't call. I mean, most likely he's got a straight queen 9 or 9-7, in which case I would have the full outs unless he's got clubs too. I'm just going to fold. I think that's an interesting turn situation. I'm not entirely convinced that Fipsy is a fish simply because he posted, although it's certainly an indication. But I've just seen a lot of regulars posting to get in, which I don't really understand. Maybe it's not such a bad play. I don't know. But I'll certainly, yeah. See, you look at his stats here. He's 19-0. Actually, this is more of a tight passive archetype. Archetype? Is that the right usage of the word? Oh, I'll have to look that up. So I flop trips, decent. Potentially I'm down to 6 outs or fewer against 5-3. If they've got 5-3, they could have one of my side cards too. but most likely trips are good. So bet. And I think it's pretty obvious I should just throw in the nickel here. I'm gonna check, and I could bet too. Nothing wrong with that. And I'm just gonna fold here. Uh, my hand is fairly unlikely to improve. This guy, the small knowledge I have against him says he's passive. Most likely he's got like a massive draw, but I don't know. I think that's a very interesting spot. I mean, I have such a strong mate hand, but my hand is just not going to improve by the river very often. And I'm out of position. I don't know what happened there. I mean, I guess Poco made the nuts, right? But what did Fipsy have? Maybe like set and small flush, something like that, or who knows? Maybe it's just, who knows what happened there. It's kind of a cool spot. I don't often fold top two on the flop, but it seemed like a reasonable approach, just given the situation. Right? It's a 5-way limped pot. You get a passive player potting it. I mean, I don't like raising here. I think that too often I'm going to go to the end as an underdog. And there's what, maybe $1 dead money in the pot. You know, you have to be basically a favorite to stack off in this situation. Could I call? Maybe call, or I could call, and then on like a 2, 3, 4, 5, ace 10 or jack, I could put action in. All right, that's another approach. Not quite strong enough to over limp here with the dangling deuce. If that deuce is 7, I'd be in. Well, sort of a little frustrating session to be at such a good table and not really win any pots, but that is the curse of a poker player. Too marginal to open here. King 6, 5, 9. So I have a second best hand. I feel like good hand selection is critical to your long-term success as a poker player. If you are routinely entering into pots with an advantage against your opponent because they're playing a wider spectrum of hands out of position against you, then you're going to profit. You're going to face easier decisions, and you're going to win more pots and win bigger pots and get your money in as a nice favorite, which of course the edge is nice, but also because poker is essentially an even money game, even though it's not really, but when you're betting against somebody, you're both betting the same amount of money, so you're winning most of the time, right? If you're a favorite, so that's very nice, very good. So a pretty big flop here for me. 5 card, non-nut wrap, pair, and flush draw, and I'll just keep betting. He could fold made hands that beat me, and somehow I find a nut out in there, even though most of my outs were non-nut. But on the turn, you know, you could fold a pocket pair higher than 9 or king. Also be sort of nice to just fold out bare higher flush draws, which might not be able to take the heat. And just a weak flush draw on a 5-way pot, not really something that you want to be betting or calling on. Very good chance that I'm drawing very slim here. So just check and fold, especially against a passive player and a somewhat loose caller. Still a decent table. Two tighter players and three somewhat looser players. These guys are loose passive, which is very nice to play against. It's close to the most profitable type of opponent, and really the easiest to play against. You can value bet very thin against them, and you don't really have to make any big payoffs with medium strength hands. You can just fold them when they show aggression, because they bet generally with very strong hands. And it'll be important to observe their showdown hands to confirm this analysis. You never want to just make a first impression of an opponent and then go with that. You always want to be patiently retesting your axioms and examining their play, trying to get some insight into the fish psychology. And here, you got to give this guy credit for a straight. That's, you got to be thinking, betting and betting. Probably he's got something nice, and St. Bell's probably trying to catch up with flush draw and boat draw, most likely. Even like something like 8-7 borderline, maybe might check back on the river. Or St. Wells could have like queen 8 and just calling down with it. Interesting that he did actually bet 8-7 on the river. But not that he shouldn't, but oftentimes these players won't bet sort of strong made hands on the river. They're mostly betting previous streets to like protect themselves from getting outdrawn, and now they're scared that their opponent took some bizarre check call down line at the nuts, which they never would do. So that was a nice value bet, actually. Value betting is the core of winning poker. Value betting and betting hands that are likely to be good in order to protect them. This is the most important thing. This is the basic strategy of pot limit Omaha. Yes, there are good spots to bluff sometimes and that sort of thing, but mostly it's about betting when you're likely to be best. So this seems like a very reasonable spot to isolate raise the loose limper. My hand is decent, highly connected, with some high card value here, medium card value. Pick up a relatively tight hitchhiker in the blinds, and if they both check to me, I will check back. Pray for the 8 of clubs. And I'm basically on check fold right now. Pretty close to, oh, never mind. Of course, the player posting under the gun is a tell that they are a lucid player, even though this guy isn't searchable. Of course, not all recreational players are searchable. I guess they get sick of grinders following them from table to table. And I've done that in the past. We'll see in a hand or two if I've got any hands in this guy already. Even with a very loose player, I don't like being at a table with 4 other regulars and one really loose player, because the reason is the way that the small stage problem in Omaha ecology works is that these guys, Poco and Lorelei, are sort of giving value to everyone at the table, presumably Minyu as well, and so the fewer regs there are, the higher the share of value you get, right? If you clone Lorelei and put him or his twin here and here, then they're all giving me value. I've got a much better win rate then. So here I'm thinking if Poco calls, I'll get in the pot. If he folded, maybe I would just fold. And I'm going to check every flop. Pretty decent chance to check raise gin flops and perhaps attract a call from Poco along the way. This would be a very bad spot to call. I do have some nice gin turns, but simply not going to draw multi-way with a non-nut flush draw out of position. Although it's actually Scream Mix could have slow played a high flush here, thinking that Poco would have raised the flop with the set. So he's only really, so if he's got a straight draw, this is a play I make sometimes. If he's got a straight draw, then he's just going to fold if he bets the turn. Or maybe he bluffed the river himself with a missed wrap, something like that. Pretty nice flop with a pair, top pair, the toppest of pairs, as well as a nut flush draw and a weak gut shot. Not bad just to take down the pot. I don't think I will ISO here. Maybe I should. Yeah. Try to knock these guys out of the pot. And if I hit my 8 or 4, then it'll be good. I'm not going to try to bluff 2 loose players out of a pot. It seems to me like a recipe for failure, especially when they checked me on the flop. It really hasn't said anything about their hands. They could have hit pretty well and still checked me. They're passive. I had the initiative. Interesting that the Lorelei played his aces like that. He could have made it. Let's just rewind this hand here. After I pot it, he could have made it 190, which is about 16% of effective stack sizes. I don't hate his play, limp call with aces, especially a passive player like him. It's a nice deceptive play. But probably raising after I pot it is also very viable. Of course, opening the hand is the standard. You open and hope to get 3 bets, so you can put in that punishing 4 bet. But just interesting and important to note that he just limp called his aces. Well, that is going to be the end of this live play video for now. So hopefully you enjoyed watching some of the spots that I got into. And if you have any questions or comments or criticisms of my play, please do feel free to post in the comments. Have a great day.